and here, your thrifty apprentice. Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome back to the channel's version of A Crafty Corner. First, let me take this opportunity to say Merry Christmas to everyone. It is Christmas Eve, and tomorrow is Christmas Day. Such an exciting time of unity and love, spending time with family and just showing that you care. And it is actually my favorite time of the year. I honestly wish it could be Christmas, the Christmas season, the Christmas feeling, should I say, all year long. I want to take time in this video, now that I've said that, to share with you guys a watercolor. In this particular case, it's a watercolor travel system that I created in hopes that it will give you guys some inspiration, some thoughts, some ideas that you can take and run with in order to create something of your own, whether it's to reproduce something like this or even to take some ideas and just kind of, stir them in your own direction. Now, the idea for this particular project came from the Viviva watercolor travel system. I have been looking at it on their website quite a bit. I've had it in and out of the cart for a minute, and I never decided on actually ordering it. Instead, I decided that I would kind of, make something of my own along those lines that would kind of satisfy the want monster that was eating me up about getting that watercolor travel system. So I would like to kind of walk you guys through what I've done, and hopefully it'll inspire you. I will go ahead and throw out sort of a shameless plug that I will be listing this particular journal style on my Etsy shop. It will be custom orders, so I will be making them as they're ordered instead of trying to produce several of them and having them here in the studio. So just kind of want to throw that out in case you guys are interested in something of that nature. So let's start with the closure. The closure is actually very simple. I'm not sure if you know, but I actually have locks, and a lot of times I have the bands that I tie my locks back with, they will stretch and sort of lose elasticity. So what I've done is simply knotted off one end of those bands after washing it, tied it off with some embroidery floss, and attached part of a necklace. This is an old necklace that I have from a piece of jewelry that I collected. And there made a very simple and straightforward closure. I think it's cute, and it went really well with the pattern paper that I chose to use for the cover of the portfolio. So let's set that to the side, and next we're going to actually talk about the base. The base itself is constructed from 2 file folders. Now, if you're familiar with the way a file folder is, here I just have one that's sort of half of a folder, but of course it comes with another end on it, and down here is where it folds. If you pay attention to a file folder where it folds, there are 3. It's not on this side, it's actually on the other side, but you're going to see like 3 perforated lines, and I simply went to the line that was the farthest out, the 3rd one, and made a crease or used the bone folder to score, and it sort of gave me about a 1/2 inch spine between where the manila folder folds and that 3rd score line. Let me see if I can just show you what I mean here. So here is a file folder, and as you can see here on the fold, there are 3 lines. I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but if you pull one out, you can. So basically, I just folded on that 3rd line, and it gave me a spine. And I did that to 2 different folders and cut off the area that had the tabs so that both of the folders would be exactly the same. Then I opened them up and inserted one folder inside the other, glued it down, and it gave me a base that had a 1-inch spine on both sides. Next, it came time to actually reinforce those spines. So I took an additional piece of cardboard and placed it down on both 1-inch spines, glued it down, and then took the fabric that I was going to use to cover the entire base, cut 2 strips, laid it down on top of the spine in order to cover it because it was going to be on the inside. Now I did cut both of these strips long enough to wrap around to the front as I was covering the spine, and I glued that down so that it would be secure. I knew I was going to be covering it with the fabric for the base. So at this point, I've got the base constructed from the 2 file folders with the 2 1-inch spines. I've reinforced both spines, and I've covered both spines with the fabric that I was going to be using to cover the entire portfolio. Okay, now it came time to cover the portfolio. I simply took the fabric of choice, and you can use whatever fabric you want. I chose to use this fabric, which sort of emulates leather, but it's more of a, I don't know, maybe a plastic vinyl type leather. Now, there are several ways you can treat a fabric like this in order to use it as to cover for your base. I didn't do anything. I didn't pre-treat it with any type of glue mixture. I simply cut fabric large enough to cover the entire base, open flat like this, with at least 1/2 inch to 1 inch seam allowance on all sides of it. That would give me the ability to glue the base down to the fabric and then wrap it around, creating corners and tucking that fabric on the inside. It's just like you would wrap any other journal base. If you've never done a wrapping a journal in fabric, I'll link a video here where you can watch it being done. That way you'll know what I mean. But if you're used to my videos, or if you've created your own journals, you're probably able to follow what I'm saying about wrapping the fabric. So I glued down the base, I wrapped the fabric in, I glued down the seam allowance to the inside. I was sure to try to get my corners as flat as I possibly could, as even as I possibly could. That way I wouldn't have any buckling, and that the corners would lay down flat, because I did not want to have to use any like book corners or anything of that nature. So after the journal, or I'm sorry, the base was constructed, spines done, the journal is now wrapped with the covering fabric. The extra seam allowance has been wrapped to the inside. And of course, in these 3 sections, you still have the exposed base, and it came time to cover that. First, I covered the middle. I simply took pattern paper from, let's see, this pattern pack. Let me grab it really quickly. This is a DCWV. This came from Joann's, if I'm not mistaken. It's one of the house pattern papers that you can find in there, and this is what I use to cover. So there's this piece that I just cut big enough to cover the back panel. Before I glued it down, I took the offcuts of what I used for the cover, and then just another offcut that I had laying around in the studio. And those 2 offcuts I glued together in order to form a belly band. I added glue to the top and the bottom of the belly band and glued it to the actual backing pattern paper. I took it to my sewing machine. I sewed around all 4 corners in order to secure it, making that belly band really stable. I added Fabrifix to the back of this entire panel and then glued it in so that it would cover the base on the inside. And of course, it also covered these strips of fabric that was used to cover the spines. And that's how I created the back. Hopefully you guys are able to follow along. Next, it came time to cover both the left and the right panels on the inside. For those, I am using the exact same pattern paper. I simply pulled it from the pack. I cut it down to size to fit. For the back right panel, I cut a pocket from the fabric that I was using, I glued it down to a scrap piece of file folder. I sewed around. I then added glue to the sides and the bottom, adhered it to what I was using as my backing panel, took that to my sewing machine and sewed around. added glue to the backing panel, and then glued it down to the inside of the portfolio. After that was dry, I grabbed this little bird golden sticker and glued it here just for extra decoration, because I felt like it went really well with the gold bird cages, and it ties into the gold theme for the rest of the portfolio. For the front cover, I did the same thing, cutting down the backing folder paper to fit. In this case, I cut a larger pocket from the fabric that I was using, but instead of backing it to file folder, I didn't back this pocket to anything because I wanted to leave it loose to sort of have stretch and give for me to fit more into this pocket, bigger and wider items into this pocket than into the pocket that's on the actual back panel. So I glued down the 4 corners in the bottom to the backing paper. I took it to the sewing machine. I sewed all around to secure everything. I added Fabrifix to the backing paper, then glued it into the portfolio. Next, it came time to bind in the signature. For the signature, I am actually using Artist Loft paper. Now, I've talked about Artist Loft paper in several videos. I don't feel like I really need to go into it too much into depth, other than to say that they have different levels of paper: a student, an artist, and a professional. I actually like both their student and professional range of papers. I've never actually shown you guys the professional level on camera. I did decide to pick up a little spiral bound sketchbook of their professional paper in order to bind in here, mainly because I wanted to use it, but mostly because I wanted to show it to you guys since I never have. Now, I use the level 2 paper to bind this accordion style book, which I did a watercolor cupcake for Christmas in. You guys have seen this video already. I will link it in case you want to check it out again. But I like the artist level. I think it's a pretty decent paper, about as good as maybe your Canson XL paper or maybe your Fabriano Studio, in that range. But here I use the professional. This is the number 3. You'll always see the number 3 professional. This is the mixed media pad, and it is rough textured because I really wanted to try out the rough textured paper. So instead of using individual pages to form a signature and bind in, I simply used the 3-hole pamphlet stitch in order to bind in the entire spiral bound book. Now here you'll be able to see where the binding is tied on the inside. I simply lined the spiral up to the spine. I found where I wanted to put my holes, used a pointy tool to poke those holes through the spine, took black embroidery floss and did the 3-hole pamphlet stitch in order to attach the spiral bound book into the journal. Now, the Viviva book that this is kind of modeled after has a sketchbook in it that is top fold spiral bound that removes in and out. Now, of course, if this one ever runs out of paper, I can always just clip the embroidery floss that's holding it in and either bind in a signature of loose pages or bind in another spiral bound book. And that is an ideal that I feel you guys should consider whenever you're making some of your journals. I think it works either way. Now came the task. Of course, if you've seen the Viviva book, it comes with the Viviva watercolor flip book in it. And I wanted to see what I can do in order to sort of emulate that particular palette of flip watercolors. So I created this journal, which I called a watercolor sheet palette. About 3 years ago, Miss Diane Zimmerman, the administrator and operator of watercolorbeginnerandbeyond.com, which is a wonderful blog website where you guys can go and see a lot of information on watercolors. There are really cool contests and challenges that goes on. You can also check out the Watercolor Beginner and Beyond Facebook group, which I am a member of, and it's just real cool people doing real artsy things and sharing ideas, and like I said, some really cool challenges. Well, that administrator, a couple of years ago when I first got started with my YouTube videos, sent me a care package, some Happy Meal, which had a lot of different things in it. You guys see me use a lot of it and review a lot of it on the channel, which there is a playlist with some of those things. I'll link that as well. But in that very first thing that she sent me, she sent some Pureless, like watercolor sheets. And for a while, I had no idea what I was really going to do with these. I've played around with them here or there, but I've never had them or had an idea or a reason to kind of put them into a complete palette until now. So since I did not have the Viviva sheet or the Viviva watercolor book on hand, I used what I did, which were the peeler sheets, and I created a flip watercolor book. Now, this is simply the leftover of the offcuts of the backing paper. I folded it in half. I used a lamination pouch to laminate it. Put a little butterfly design on the front before I did. I used acrylic marker in order to write the name of what it is there. And I did all of that before I laminated it. Now, in the lamination, as you can see here for this, it is 3-hole pamphlet stitch, and it has about a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit larger spine. Now, there is no lamination on the spine. I used 2 different lamination pouches to laminate the front and the back cover separate from each other. And of course, I decorated the front cover first. Afterwards, I made a signature of watercolor paper. And in between each of the pages, I also put vellum paper. And I used the vellum paper because I wanted something to separate the watercolor, little watercolor sheets from each other. So I simply found another piece of pattern paper from the same pattern pack so that everything would be tied together. Of course, butterflies, birds, cages, all of those good things. And I'm using that as the signature cover. Just like the Viviva book, it is top flip. And what you're going to get are vellum sheets protecting each of the Pureless sheets that I have glued down to watercolor paper. If I'm not mistaken, this is Color watercolor paper. It's a really cheap, economical paper. I just needed something that I could actually put ink on and be able to swatch each of the Pureless sheets out beside, so that I would have a general representation of what each color looks like. The sheets themselves, because of how they're formulated and made, there could be a drastic difference between the color you see on the sheet and how it actually swatches out when it has water added to it. And we're going to get into a video where I use this in order to create a composition. This video is just to kind of show you guys what I created and hopefully inspire you to create your own or something of this kind, by giving you some ideas that you can run with. So as you can see, it is a complete flip palette of watercolors that are protected by the vellum sheets. Now, the Pureless book is 16 colors. I think this one may be 17 because I have a neutral tint and a black in it. But I am going to go through here, and swatch all of these out with you guys on a different video. But I just wanted you to see how the idea that I use in order to sort of replicate that Viviva watercolor flip booklet. So that lives right inside that pocket that is looser so that I could put bigger things in. And I can also get a water brush and maybe a black fine liner in there as well. And that, my friends, is how all of the inside was done. As far as the outside is concerned, once the book had been covered and bound, I simply took a piece of pattern paper from the same pattern pack, because all of those pattern papers in a pack will go together. That's why it all looks like it may have a unification to it. And I took one sheet, found the image on that sheet that I wanted, lined it up across what was the very front flap, glued it down. The piece that I had as an offcut from it, I used it for the second cover, glued it down. Now, I do want to show you guys this. And for this one, I made it into a pocket. That is a actual functioning pocket. I'm just going to show you guys actually a lot of, let's see. That's a functioning pocket, of course. You already know that this is a functioning pocket. This is a functioning pocket, as I told you. And this is a functioning belly band. So plenty of room for storage, keeping things, keeping your inspirational photos. And if you do journaling, you can keep an extra like junk journal in here because there's enough room. So storage everywhere. And I did want to show you guys this. After I covered it, before I started to cover the inside, I did stitch. I did a zigzag stitch further into the journal and then around the top in order to secure down the fabric I used to cover it. I did a straight stitch, and that also gives it a little bit more of that leathery feel. So there, guys, is how I created or did a replication of the Viviva watercolor travel system, and it really has helped to cure that little want bug that was bothering me about that palette. Now here's the thing, I may eventually end up buying that watercolor system anyway just to compare to the one I made, but for now this has definitely satisfied the need that I had in order to buy that. Hopefully you guys like this. I know it's a bit different from something that I normally create, but I really wanted to try this. I'll be honest, I really like the way it came out. I hope you guys like it too. Don't be scared. Don't hesitate to jump in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think, whether you're going to try this out. If you have the Viviva, watercolor travel system, what do you think about this creation in comparison to that one? I would honestly like to know. Be nice. Even if you have something negative to say, just be nice about it, please. But hopefully you guys picked up on something in this video that you found helpful, or you just kind of like going along with me kind of describing what I did, and hopefully you were able to follow. If you did see anything you like, please don't hesitate to give the video a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, or you're returning and you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, hit that notification bell. Keep in mind that this is an arts and craft channel. I do all types of things, create art from water-soluble products, colored pencils, alcohol, marker, oil, pastels. I also create art journals and junk journals and cards. So I like to do a lot of different things in the art world, and I love sharing that with you guys, and hopefully you like coming along on the journey. So if so, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Jump in the comment section, let me know what you think about this video. What do you think about how the portfolio came out in comparison to like the Viviva system? Share the video. Sharing is caring. Maybe someone else would love to see this, and it'll spark inspiration in them as well. Keep in mind that the video description has all of the relevant links. The Facebook group where we do all things artsy and crafty. There is currently a Christmas, I think it's still going on. No, it's not. It's probably over at this point, so scratch that. But we do all things artsy and crafty. We do run some challenges in there, so you guys come on, join us. You can check out the most recommended product list where you'll get great quality products that won't break the bank. And you can also check out the Etsy shop and Patreon. Patreon does have a new level of membership coming really soon, but right now the level of membership available gives you a behind the scenes look at things that goes on in the studio, traceable for those more complicated demos that come out on YouTube, shout outs, and my shout outs, I do have a shout out video coming up really soon, so that'll be cool. And you can also check out Etsy, which this will be listed on Etsy. If you guys are interested in having me make you one, I'll be more than happy to. Keep in mind, it is custom order, so it won't be quick shipping, but I'm gonna put time into it, make it really nice, and then it'll ship out. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Keep in mind, as I tell you at the end of every single video, first of all, Merry Christmas, guys. Merry Christmas. And just keep painting and crafting.